Thank you for tuning in to WVMN Grantham Mechanicsburg 90.7 Pulse Radio. My name is Marie, and I'm the radio manager here at the Pulse. And I am sitting down with Kelly Gainey, History Club President. Kelly, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, thanks, Marie.
Would you like to give us a sneak peek about what we're going to be talking about today on World College Radio Day?
Absolutely. So with this year's theme of peace, I decided to look into different points of time throughout history where we've had notable moments of peace or world peace, hopefully. And it's going to be really good, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, awesome. We're very excited to hear about it. So before we launch into all this, let me just give all of our listeners a little backstory about World College Radio Day and what the Declaration of Peace is for this day. So the aim of College Radio Day is to raise a greater international awareness of the many college and high school radio stations that operate around the world by encouraging people who would not normally listen to college radio to do so on this day. And that information can be found at collegeradio.org. World College Radio Day came about in 2012. That was the first time that it was celebrated, and now here we are in 2022 celebrating Voices for Peace and hoping that Ukraine can tune in and participate in this as well. The declaration that was put out supporting peace by student radio worldwide begins, "We, the student radio stations and student radio organizations participating in World College Radio Day 2022, make the following declaration. 1. We support the right for people of all nations to live in peace and to be free from armed conflict and the threat of armed conflict. 2. We support peaceful, nonviolent methods to resolve disagreements and disputes between groups and countries and condemn the use of violence to start conflicts. 3. We believe that student radio is a platform for all voices regardless of race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, social class, physical ability or attributes, religious or ethical values systems, national origin, or political beliefs. 4. We believe that celebrating diversity, equity, and inclusion leads to a greater understanding between people and increased acceptance of others. 5. Student radio stands with all those who are oppressed or suffering from violence and seeks to champion justice and support sustainable peace for everyone." Now, this declaration, it's powerful. It is a powerful message, and it is a powerful message for our radio station today. So, Kelly, could we just launch right into this? Could you just tell me about the first case study that you have?
Absolutely. So, my first case study takes us all the way back to 273 BC to 232 BC. That takes us to early ancient India and looking at Ashok's empire. King Ashok was a very interesting individual. His first name that he was known for was Ashok the Terrible, because he built torture chambers in his cities and ruled with like a really iron fist. It wasn't until he decided that he wanted to conquer Kalinga. That battle was a very, very sad, very, very deadly battle. But it was after that battle that he was walking around the grounds and for the first time, his eyes were opened to the brutality and his brutal nature and all the damage left behind him from his actions. And this led him to adopt Buddhism and renounce all violence, all possessions, like 180 complete change kind of personality. The people gave him the name of Ashok the Great, and his kingdom became called the Peaceable Kingdom. And it sent a message worldwide of that there can be peace in an area of conflict, and that different religions, because there was multiple religions in India. It's a very vast area and groups of people, but that they can live together in harmony and come together. And it was really beautiful to see a person realize their mass destruction and try to make amends and restore peace in at least his world.
Yeah, that self-realization, that self-reflection that sometimes we lack in these very historical moments. We're so caught up in the moment. We're so caught up in being right in our own country and all of that we just forget to self-reflect and look at our actions.
Absolutely. I think you can see that throughout history, but especially presently, we get so wrapped up in what we're doing that we don't see the chaos or destruction that we leave behind, because we live in such a me-driven society that we don't realize how many people we're hurting to get our way.
Right. So could you tell me, now, Pulse Radio is based out of a Christian college, rooted in Brother in Christ beliefs. So could you just tell me about this Christian Peace, the Truce of God movement, and the Kiss of Peace ritual case study?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Peace of God's original name is in Latin for Pax Dei. And so this was the first mass religious movement of peace noted in the Western world. And so that took place from the 10th to 12th century. And the sole purpose of this movement was the church trying to organize world peace. Now, if you know anything about the medieval period, it was a violent period because there was no sustained king. There was nothing distinct or set in stone. Everybody was fending for themselves, trying to make something of themselves. And so the best or easiest way that people saw to do that was through violence and conquering towns, and okay, now I own you and you are my vassals, and that whole feudal system. And even churches were getting attacked in all of this, and clergy were being killed. And so the Catholic Church, being the biggest political power of the day, said, enough, we're not doing this anymore. And the church brought all of the nobles, or people who consider themselves to be noble, kings, anyone with power, brought them together and decreed this like law in a sense, and they called it the Peace of God, and made them swear to prohibit attacking clergy, consecrated places, more specifically churches, no fighting on Sundays, which it worked for a very slight amount of time, but man being man still wants to continue to gain power, and so it didn't stop the fighting. So then they expanded the no-fight days to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So no fighting on the weekends, everybody. And those who did fail to follow these rules were then banished from society, which was huge. Especially those who try to work their entire lives to become the head of some estate. Being banished from society and everything you ever know, you lose everything, money, land, and that means power. So that was crucial for a lot of people. But then in 1096, Pope Urban II proclaimed peace among Christians and decided to try and redirect their fighting energy towards a common enemy. And this is where we get the Crusades, which, if you know anything about the Crusades, it was a holy war for peace, quote unquote, but really ended up in the destruction of Islamic communities and just uprooting them out of their home and their territory. But for many, many years, noted as a peaceful time, especially in Europe, because people were unified. So many people can unify through trauma, through war. It's honestly one of the things that brings people together for the most part.
Peace for one country, but not for another.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So international peace, I mean, it seems unheard of these days, right? So was there ever a time where there was a stretch of international peace?
Absolutely. That brings to mind for me the Pax Romana, which, similar to the medieval period of time, the Pax Romana was about a 200-year span of peace in the Roman Empire. It is notably the longest stretch of international peace, and it started in 27 BC, lasting till 180 AD. So it saw the change of how we note our calendars, which is pretty incredible. So it all started with Octavian of the Roman Empire. He advocated for a shift towards prosperity and pacification within the borders of the empire. Before Octavian was, Julius Caesar, Augustine, and they were good leaders, but through mean force. And they wanted to continually expand their empire. How do you do that? Through force. Octavian was satisfied with how big the empire was. He just now wanted to retain it and make sure that the people were living in harmony. They've taken in so many different culture groups that he was trying to fix the divide that Rome had started from conquering so many people. The Civic Rebellion fell dramatically during this time. It didn't stop entirely, and then centuries later, following the Napoleonic Wars, we have the Pax Britannica, which is the peace of Britain, is supposed to correspond with the Pax Romana. They wanted to be the new Rome and be that new, centuries year long of peace. And they almost made it. The Peace of Britain dated from 1815 to 1914, so they were just shy of 100 years, which is kind of incredible when we see how the world progressed, because when you're looking at 1914, you think World War I, World War II are coming, and that's the absolute opposite of peace. And they were able to stay pretty peaceful throughout all of this. However, you should note that historically, ages of peace will always have notable battles throughout any and all of them.
That's very deep. It's a very deep thought to think about. While one country is in peace, other countries are fighting. There's wars happening. There are people dying. Just destruction everywhere. So how can there be peace if there is still war?
That's a really good question, and a question I think about a lot being a historian and looking at things in their context. We study so many heartbreaking moments in history, but one of the beautiful things about all these heartbreaking moments is that they build beautiful character and beautiful stories and lessons that you never would have been able to learn if it wasn't for the hardship. And so one thing that we can always know for certain is that on this earth, there's never going to be peace because of the effect of sin and brokenness. There's just will always be an evil force that breaks into our peaceful environment. And there's always going to be disagreements, fights, even like parties going to war. And it doesn't mean literal violence. It can be emotional. It doesn't have to be physical or, with machinery. And so my understanding of peace, there's two sides of peace. You have negative peace and you have positive peace. Negative peace is documented as the absence of personal violence. So a lot of us can relate to that. Of everyday lives are pretty peaceful because, we're not being physically assaulted or anything's coming up in our way, or we're not living in a war zone. For the most part, we have peace and we can enjoy that life. We always have bad days that erupt our peace. I know I have those days. And then positive peace is documented as the absence of structural violence or social justice. And when I think about that, I try to think of, is there any point in our history that hasn't had either physical or, social violence? Most people will come to the conclusion of, no. That's not to mean that there's no hope and there's no peace. It doesn't mean that peace isn't achievable. Peace is definitely achievable. When I think of peace and when I want to find peace, I always reflect on God's peace, the peace that surpasses all understanding. And it is the only kind of peace that can fix this broken world and that can help people find peace even in the most trying of places. Corrie ten Boom, a Holocaust survivor, wrote a beautiful book called The Hiding Place, and the entire message of that book is her finding peace even in the darkest of places. And I admire her so much as a person. And one of the verses that she both talks about, but I also lean on when I need to find peace, is John 14:27. And it says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." I think that's a verse to hold on to for life, especially in the moments where you feel that peace is absent and times get hard, but fear not, because God gives peace. And I think that's an incredible and important thing to keep with us at all times.
That is truly a comforting note to end on, and to celebrate international peace as we go through our own trials here in the United States, while also looking outside at the world and seeing the violence that happens. So John 14:27 is the verse that lends you peace and gives you comfort. Kelly, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and being on 90.7 Pulse Radio for World College Radio Day. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I think these conversations are so important, and having platforms like radio to have them be held and to reach people beyond our, four walls, I'm all here for it.
Yeah, and just for our listeners, where can they find the History Club on social media, and what if they want to send you an email to learn more?
Absolutely. So we have a bunch of events that we love to do throughout the year. We advocate for making history accessible to people, and if you want to learn, we want to be a resource to you. So you can either follow us on Instagram, which is MU_History Club. We have a link in our bio where you can either email us directly, or if you just want to email us to get onto our email list, it's historyclub@messiah.edu. And that is historyclub@messiah.edu.
Well, thank you so much for coming on again, and thank you everyone for listening to our live show that was right before this, and to this interview with Kelly. I hope that you gained something from this. I hope that you've reflected, and I hope that you are praying for peace for the world, as we are praying for peace for you and the world. Stay tuned to 90.7 Pulse Radio for more of your favorite music.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to World College Radio Day on 90.7 Pulse Radio. I'm Sabrina Stanford, the music director, and I'm joined with
Marie Miller, the radio manager. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in and for celebrating international peace with us. Follow us on Instagram, Messiah Pulse, and stay tuned to 90.7 Pulse Radio for more great music. And World College Radio Day stops at midnight, so keep celebrating today. And thank you for listening, and thank you for celebrating college radio stations. It is unseen, unknown work. It is a lot of stuff that people don't know about. People don't know the work that Sabrina does. She sits in her office and she listens to all of the songs that you hear on the radio. You might hear them once. She listens to entire albums and previews them. So a round of applause to her for her work, and a round of applause to the entire world, all of these college radio stations, for putting in that work, for choosing this music, their programming, their songs, creating their liners that you hear at the top of every hour and in between music, and just to the advisors for allowing us to have a medium, a platform that is unseen, and because it's listening, it's audio, and it's a dying medium, but college radio, high school radio stations can bring it back, and that is what World College Radio Day is all about. So thank you so much for listening. You're tuned to WVMN Grantham Mechanicsburg 90.7 Pulse Radio on World College Radio Day, and have a great night.
You're listening to WVMN Grantham Mechanicsburg 90.7. This is Messiah University's Pulse Radio.
Pretty little liar, what you gonna say? Tell me that you love me, lying to my face. I know you double-crossed me, girl, you're such a fake. What a shame, guess my lover was a snake. Pretty little liar, what you gonna say? Tell me that you love me, lying to my face. I know you double-crossed me, girl, you're such a fake. What a shame, guess my lover was a snake. Pretty little liar, what you gonna say? Tell me that you love me, lying to my face. I know you double-crossed me, girl, you're such a fake. What a shame, guess my lover was a snake. broken. And snake emoji on my phone when you calling. Cause our love doesn't feel like falling. When I cry myself to sleep, I see you in my dreams. I can't breathe, gotta hyperventilate. Hiding your phone when you're sleeping, staying up late on the weekend. Deep down I knew you were cheating, but I didn't wanna believe it. I'm busy fighting my demons, you were so deceiving, messing with my feelings. You are my god and I'm beating, now I'm leaving. Pretty little liar, what you gonna say? Tell me that you love me, lying to my face. I know you double-crossed me, girl, you're such a fake. What a shame, guess my lover was a snake. Pretty little liar, what you gonna say? Tell me that you love me, lying to my face. I know you double-crossed me, girl, you're such a fake. What a shame, guess my lover was a snake. What you gonna say?